What's up, guys? I'm Mr. Audio, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. Are you using clippers the right way? I've got some pointers that I think you guys should really check out. Dive in and see what's going on. So in this case, I'm stressing you should use a clipper before EQing, at least the low end. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to show you a few different examples on why you should do this and how to mitigate certain problems that could arise from clipping the low end. So when you clip the low end of a kick drum, it becomes distorted and kind of woofy. Let me show you what that sounds like. I'm going to put my clipper after my EQ to give you an example. So here I've got a kick. It's in MIDI form. It sounds good. So in this case, I'm going to show you what the kick sounds like before any processing. And I'm going to tell you what the problem is here. So with these two plugins shut off, it sounds like this. It's not a bad kick. I just feel like it needs a bit more low end to sound, I guess, more modern, if you will. Well, adding more low end to this is just going to increase the headroom that it eats up. You're just going to lose a ton of headroom. You know what I mean? And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So without that, the kick looks like this. Let's just record that. Look at all this headroom that it's eating up. Look at the dynamic range from here to there. It peaks at such a higher level than this right here. This is the kick after the processing. Now, I'm not saying eating up headroom is bad. I'm just saying it might be hard to get a loud mix or master if you're eating up this much headroom with a kick. So what do people reach for? A limiter, clipper, compressor. Compressor might leave even more of a peak, but we'll get into that in another video. So clippers and limiters are what people really reach for in this stage. And they usually reach for it after EQ. And I think that's a mistake, and I'll show you why. When we're listening to this kick and I want more bass, let's just see what happens when I add more bass and only bass. Let's resample and see what happens. Now see, look at that. Now watch what happens when we put this clipper after the fact. I'm going to make a copy and turn it on, and we'll adjust the amount of clipping here. Now notice it gets kind of woofy and distorted and just sounds kind of quite terrible, if you will. Well, let's fix that. Let's try to mess with the clip. You can see, no matter how much we mess with it right there, let's mess with it some more. Let's just prove my point a bit more. No clipping. A little bit of clipping, you can start to hear it. And the more aggressive you are with the clipper, the more that woof sound comes back in. And it's just not a pleasing sound. Let's check out what I did. So if I want to gain some headroom, I'll first use a clipper, right? I'll use this clipper, clip off this much. Let's mute the EQ here, turn it off so that we're not hearing anything. So now let's record this in with just the clipper set to what I have it here. Now, you can hear a little bit of that woofiness, but now is where we add the bass back in. Right now that the waveform is smaller, more condensed, let's add some bass element back in with an EQ. Now let's turn this on, and you'll see that the high-end woofiness that the clipper causes kind of disappears. Watch this. And it almost adds to like the attack of the beater that's hitting the kick drum. You know what I'm saying? So the woofiness is kind of transformed with this EQ. Let me show you all I'm doing with the EQ here. So all I'm doing with the EQ is just boosting a massive amount, 6.4 dB of low end at 125 hertz. It's nothing special, but now it sounds and looks like an actual kick. And it doesn't eat up much headroom. Look at the dynamic range, it's much shorter. Let's just shut off this and we'll do a side-by-side comparison. So this is just the EQ. Look at these two kicks and how they differ. You see what I'm talking about? Now watch this. Look at the difference. We're just going to zoom in. It's the same kick, just altered a little bit. You see that? Okay, now that we've got that covered, let's check out what happens with just the clipper. See, it reduces that waveform. When you turn this on, it adds more bassiness to that. And now you have a kick that is actually a nicely mixed kick. You can throw this in any production and it's not going to eat up a ton of headroom. Turn it up as loud as you want to hear the kick, and boom, you're sitting on a good project right there. Now, let me show you another reason why you want to not clip the low end first, why you should use your clipper before your EQ. So when you're clipping high-end elements, such as like snares and cymbals to gain headroom, the harmonics that it's adding doesn't add a woofiness, doesn't make them sound terrible. It actually it's almost imperceivable. You almost can't hear what it's actually adding to the sound. And I want to show it to you. Let me take a snare. We'll group this so I don't have to unfreeze it. And then I'll take and I will throw, let's send this to the right thing here. We're going to grab a clipper. I'm going to go to Ven Audio because I love their free clip too. It's free, by the way. It's not sponsored. You can go check it out. Now watch, no matter what I do to this section, so I'm going to loop these 2 bars here, and we're just going to focus in on these 2 snare hits, okay? We'll solo this out. Look how aggressive I'm being with the clipper. You can only really hear it in that first clip where I bring it down a little bit too far and back it off. Let's check and try and mess with this again. So as you can see right here, I'm clipping it a whole lot more than it needs to be. I can be a little bit less aggressive. But when you're that aggressive with the kick, watch what happens. I'm going to save this because I don't want to ruin what I've got here. I'll just double this. Turn this on. Look what happens when you do that to the kick. I can't even get close to the same result. It just sucks. So I'm going to show you another method if you're working with loops, what you can do to separate out the low and the high end. It's similar to what I do with like bass guitars, which I've shown in a previous video. But the point is that you should be clipping the low end before you add the bass that you're trying to add in. So here's this part right here. I'm going to mute this and I'm going to mute this so you could just hear this unprocessed splice fill. Now in the mix, I felt like these tom fills right here were just not loud enough once the high end of the snares was clipped. There's a bunch of information here that is just lower than the rest of it. So I wanted to boost that in the EQ a little bit. For this one, that worked. I boosted that and it didn't really affect the clipping of this. Now watch what it sounds like before and after my processing here. So I'll shut these off. I'll turn these on. Sounds a bit more epic, and you can see on the clipper it's almost doing nothing to the toms. Look at that. See that? Almost nothing. Now there's a section where the toms are a bit more loud and I had to split it up. So here's the low end. I split up the low end from the high end, and I actually didn't end up using a clipper on the low end. So here's just the low end. And then I also used that same EQ that I used on the other fill loops. I just copied it over. What I did then is I separated out the high end to kind of even out the waveform with another, filter. And then I was pretty aggressive on the clip, if I remember correctly. So then we can just play these 2 sounds together. And as you can see, I retained much of the tone of the toms in this fill. Because they were kind of mixed in and the tails kind of bleed together, I didn't want to be stuck with just a kind of distorted tom sound. So I decided to split them up all together and just kind of work with 2 tracks. I do this quite often in my productions. Knowing how to work with what you have is a great tool. Anyway, I just wanted to draw your attention to what could be possible using the clipper in the right sense in individual elements in your production. Not just individual elements, you can use them on loops like I've shown you here. Anyway, that's the video, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Mr. Audio, out.